Hi, and welcome everybody. Welcome to this webinar regarding geographical reporting using the SAP BI suite. We have a nice crowd out there today, and we're very pleased to welcoming you. My name is Christophe Robbens. I'm the area manager and expert advisor for Micropole Belgium. And together with me is Nick Verhoeven, who is the BI Predictive Solution Advisor, also a specialist in Lumira and the Predictive Analytics Suite. Today we will be discussing geographical reporting using SAP Lumira, which is quite interesting. There are also a lot of add-ons that are available that Nick will briefly mention. During the webinar, there is no option to ask questions, but at the end of the webinar, we will open up the chat box for questions, and Nick and I will tackle those questions as they come in. I leave the word now to Nick, who will be taking us through the presentation and the demo. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christophe. So, thank you for that introduction, but what me and Christophe thought would be a fun thing to do, as this is an actual geo webinar, is to also show you where we are coming from and where we're speaking from a geographical point of view. So doing that, I have a nice excuse to show the Lumira extensions, a very lively community that's out there creating open source extensions as well as the somewhat more official extensions. And we'll use these to do a geographical introduction before we formally get started doing this webinar. So what you see here behind you, and don't worry about it too much, I will explain the user interface later on. But what you see here is one of the extensions that is in the SAP Lumira suite. And what I have here is a 3D world map. And on it I will do my own introduction. So what I will do here is I will drag in the latitude and longitude. And what you will see is that 4 locations will pop up. So this will be Den Bosch in the Netherlands, Dublin, Copenhagen and Barcelona. And a small pattern that you might see emerging is that I've moved from the colder cities to the warmer cities as I've added temperature as a color. And because I've been to these 4 cities in the last 4 years and I've lived there, I thought that would lend itself extremely well for a geographic webinar. But I'm not as selfish as you might think right now. What we've also done is if we have plotted the exact same information, but then for all of you. So let me just open up that data set. And we've looked at your registrations, where you're all coming from. And what we see is that our audience today is predominantly located in Belgium and predominantly located in the Flanders region using the Galileo extension and more specifically the Galileo heat map extension. So you see we have one visitor from Luxembourg, and then if we zoom in over here, you see we have quite a lot of visitors in the Brussels region. And this is also what we'll be using in today's webinar, with a little bit of a joke intended, that we have me, as you might have noticed in my accent, a very Dutch person, and then including that in the Belgian region, imitating a random retailer. But we'll get back to that in a few seconds. So all jokes aside, let's get started with the webinar. So the first thing we'll do and what we'll discuss is geo-reporting in SAP, just showing how geo-reporting is in the lifelines of SAP and showing all of the capabilities that we have in the 3 main products in our SAP BI suite, being namely Web Intelligence, Lumira and Design Studio. Then we'll get into this scenario that I already showed you a little bit of what we're going to do, showing off the geographic capabilities of SAP Lumira and sharing it back to the BI platform. Then Christophe will take over and speak about the great partnership that we have as SAP together with Micropole and the added value that Micropole adds in this equation. And then finally, as Christophe already mentioned, we'll have 5 minutes left to answer all your questions, also on the chat of course. But first up, geo-reporting in SAP. So what kinds of reporting do we have? Well, first up, and probably the most famous solution that we have in regards to business intelligence, is our Web Intelligence solution. And what we've had for a while is a Galileo extension through which you can plot maps and plot your data on a map in Web Intelligence. But what's coming up in BI 4.2 is that out of the box, Web Intelligence will support some basic base maps that you can use with geographical data. So what you see is that if you're familiar with Lumira, but what you will see in a few seconds as well, that you can create your own geographic hierarchies as a self-service in Web Intelligence and plot that data on a map starting BI 4.2. Then in Lumira, and I already gave you a sneak peek with the extensions that you see at the bottom of the pictures behind Lumira, but what I'll be doing in today's webinar as well is showing the Esri extension. And quite exciting news here, because Esri Maps, all of the base maps of Esri Maps are included with SAP Lumira for free. So all you're going to see in today's webinar is out-of-the-box capabilities, apart from the first things I've showed you in the intro, are all out-of-the-box capabilities using Esri Maps and SAP Lumira. And then finally, for the ones familiar with the solution Design Studio, unfamiliar with the solution, Design Studio is our enterprise BI manner of doing dashboarding, meaning IT creates and shares this dashboard across the enterprise. So here you can imagine you can work with more advanced capabilities like using JavaScript and CSS to really determine the outcome. But what has been done in Design Studio is starting version 1.5, we've added the capabilities to have a geo component. So that is what you see on top of me. And you can go up to 10 different layers on one single map. But what is really exciting, what we've added in 1.6, is we have the ability to add the Open GeoJSON standard in your Design Studio dashboards. And to give you an example of how exciting that really is, GeoJSON is a very much used format on the internet to plot data geographically on a map. And then in Design Studio, you could choose whichever base map you wanted to use. Maybe your company has their own. And then on top of this base map, what a colleague of mine, for example, has done, he has plotted all of the routes of the buses in Dublin on the map of Dublin. And this was quite a nifty visualization to see. And those GeoJSON standards are everywhere on the internet, and you can find points of interest and combine it with maybe your sales revenue data. So that is quite a nice thing indeed. But what we promise is we're going to show you something, and we're going to combine this, me being Dutch and my audience predominantly being Belgian. So we're going to have a random retailer from the Netherlands invading Belgium, and me in this scenario being an analyst, I need to figure out what is the best place for our stores to be. And well, this will be a simple demo, of course, as I only have 10 minutes or so. But what I want to show you now, there we go, is the scenario I'll be taking you through. So what we're doing is we're getting data from a database of the population in Belgium. What I will show you in a few seconds as well, this is a limited list of the population in Belgium for each given city, and it's a list we've taken from Wikipedia, but that is one data source that we have, and we're going to plot that on the map to see where we have the highest density of population. But then what we'll also do is we're going to add in our own flat file, Excel file, text file, and we're also going to plot that data on a map. And what we'll do, using the power of Lumira and Esri Maps, we'll add a few layers, we'll see what the differences are, we'll see mistakes in our data set as well. And those strategic locations, as well as the population, is what we'll plot on two different maps and show this side by side, create a nice dashboard, and share this back to the BI platform. So those are the steps I'll be taking you through today. And I do apologize for my drawing of Belgium. So let me hide myself here and open up SAP Lumira once again. There we are. And I will open up a different file in which I already have the geographic data for the population in Belgium. So the data you see right here is this data. So this is a list of cities in Belgium, the different cities and their population as reported in 2013. So it is very basic data, but what we've done with this is we've imported it into Lumira, and we've added a latitude and longitude, which you can do quite simply. And that is what you're seeing right here. So we have a textual latitude and longitude, but we also have a numeric latitude and longitude, which we can use to create a geographic hierarchy. But let's make it a little bit less abstract and move from the Prepare tab into the Visualize tab to really see the data that we have. So what we have over here already is the same data you saw before, but now in a bar chart. And for the ones familiar with Lumira, it will be no surprise that you have the capabilities here to easily transform this in different kinds of visualizations. You could add calculations, but this is a geo webinar, so I'd like to stay true to that. And what we're going to do is we're going to open a geo map to start building our geographic visualizations. But at the moment we only have latitude and longitude in our data set. What we want to do is create a hierarchy so we can see differences for regions and subregions and so forth. So the first thing I'll do is, looking at the left side of my screen, I see my dimensions and I have a city dimension, and I want to create a geographic hierarchy based on this. We could use names, but to get it a little bit more specific, especially for our strategic locations, we're going to create a geographic hierarchy by latitude and longitude. So here I have my targeted dimension being city. I have in my data set my latitude and longitude, and I want to indeed generate the country, region and subregion associated with this. Now I will drag these to my map. So I have my, well, let's start with country as a geo dimension. And you see there's already one mistake, because there shouldn't be a city in France. And that's the nifty thing about plotting your data on a map. You can see things immediately that you maybe wouldn't have noticed immediately if you would just be looking at a table or a bar chart. So what we do is exclude all of the data that has to do with France and focus on Belgium and Luxembourg, that is. So what we can do now is we can drill down to the region level, to the sub-region level, but now we're just looking where our data is situated. So let's make it a bit more fun and add a measure right here. And we see the population for the different regions in Belgium. And as I've been noted by true Belgians before, this is not an accurate presentation of the population in Belgium, but do forgive my data set here, but it's more to show the capabilities here. Because what we're going to do next is add a few layers. But what you're already seeing is that this base map is becoming quite busy. So what we'll do is we'll choose something a little bit easier on the eye and add another layer. And this time we won't be focusing on the sub-region, but we'll be focusing on the cities, so the individual cities. So you see them added on the map. So these are the cities in my Wikipedia file. I will add a color for the sub-regions, so you can see that immediately. Oh, there we go. So you see the different colors if it's situated in a different sub-region, and we can also add the size over here. And this is quite interactive. What we could do is we could say, let's focus on just this area, filter there, and we can just focus on this area. And then this is already a component that we could use throughout the rest of our analysis. But okay, now we're happy. We have this information about the different regions, and we see where the population is most dense, which is quite useful information, being the Dutch retailer, to figure out where our store should be to have the most people around it. But now next up we would like to have a different map. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another visualization, but apart from just adding a visualization, I need new data. And that's also one of the fun things you can do with Lumira. You just add another data set right here, and you see all the capabilities you have. You have your Excel, your text files, copying from clipboard, business warehouse, universes, HANA, even the big data sources like Hadoop. But what we'll do for a simple example is we're going to import some basic data about strategic locations. And for some of you this might be quite familiar because these are your locations again, and this is what we'll choose as strategic locations. So we'll create this new data set and we'll do the exact same as we did before. You see the columns don't have names in this case, but it doesn't matter for what we're trying to achieve. So we're going to create a geographic hierarchy yet again as we did before, but this time by latitude and longitude. We choose our latitude and longitude. We click next. Again, we generate the country, regions and subregions. We finish that up. And now I can look at it right here. What are my values and such. But again, this is a geographic webinar. So what we're wanting to do is plot this on a map. So yet again, I have my Esri map and I could select different base maps. A bit more, well, old-fashioned I'd call this one. But let's keep it simple. Going to focus on Belgium again and add in the just created dimensions. There's my columns over here, and let's give them the color based on subregion again. Make it this one. And then the size just at random, so you see they're a little bit bigger. And you see again the strategic locations we had before. And what we see is quite interesting, that for the sake of our example, based on the people that are visiting our webinar, our retailer has defined that the most strategic locations are based in Flanders. So of course, having things more close to each other makes more sense for the retailer logistics wise, and that is what we want to communicate back to our manager as being the analyst trying to figure out where we should locate our stores. So what we'll do right here, let's add another visualization just for the fun of it. So we have a complete dashboard. So we have the population and then by city. We filter this and we'll look at the top 10, 18, give or take. And then we'll go and create a little dashboard. And what you see is that it's quite easy to make these comparisons on a map and put them next to each other and build a story around that. So you see the original map I created, then the second map. So this is what I want him to see. And in this case, I want him to see entire Belgium. And this is maybe something we would want to communicate, and then that we would want to make pretty, of course, because the eye wants something as well, and then communicate back to our manager. So what I've done beforehand is just did a little bit of editing, make it pretty, and then shared it to the BI platform before today's webinar. So what I'll do here is I'll log on to the BI platform. I'll open up the file. And what you see right here is our fictional retailer looking at the population and strategic locations. And from here he can make his decision like where should we be located. And what we see on this map is, hey, Flanders has more strategic locations as well as a denser population. So what we could do, and this is all interactive, I could say let's filter on Flanders. And then if we scroll up again, we see that everything has been affected and we're just looking at Flanders from a further point of view. And that is one of the workflows that could be very possible using our tools. So what I've done right here, and I hope you enjoyed this very short webinar on how to use our tools to do some geoplotting, what is possible also in Web Intelligence and Design Studio, just by informing you what is possible and also showing you what is possible using SAP Lumira and the BI platform to share my findings with. So what did I do today is I've used two different data sources. I've geocoded them and put them in Lumira. I've then plotted all the points of interest, and I could overlay different layers using Esri maps to figure out how they interact with each other. I could put them side by side, as I've done with the population and the strategic locations. And with this, I figured out which locations are most relevant for our fictional retailer right here. That is all from my side, but of course I'll stay online to answer any questions that you might have in the chat. But from here on out, I will give the word to Christophe.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. That was very nice to see this fictitious, totally non-guessable retailer entering Belgium. Was also quite impressed with the drawing of Belgium, I must say. Okay, so quickly talking about Micropole. We're a consulting company with around 60 consultants in Belgium, focusing on the offering you see in front of you, basically digital transformation, performance management, process optimization, but always focusing on the data of companies. So big data, data governance, classic BI, data warehousing is pretty much our cup of tea. If we go to the next slide, Nick, we are a long-term partner of SAP, and to prove that, for example, we won the most overall achieved value-added reseller of the year for 2015, which is something we're quite proud of. If you look at the award history of SAP, it's usually the ERP implementators who win awards, but we're quite happy as a BI-only company to have been recognized by SAP as a true partner. So we are quite happy to be working with them, and if you look at the Belgium market, still 50% of all the BI implementations are SAP, so we are there to support companies into leveraging their existing BI landscape to the new functionalities that Nick was just showing, for example, with Lumira. So we're quite happy to be teaming up with them for such a long time, and we're looking forward to doing good business with them going forward. If you look at their customer base, I think that's the next slide. You can see it's quite diverse. So we have pretty much customers in all of the big verticals that exist. I'm not going to take you through them, of course, but just to give an impression that we have a long-term relationship with all of these customers, and we are looking forward to growing our business even further in Belgium. That's about it, I think, for me. I'm not going to take too much time talking about Micropole. I'm sure you guys have some questions, so Nick will be opening up the chat box. So feel free to ask questions. We are here to answer these, and looking forward to what you may have want to ask. Maybe also important to add, Nick, everything that you have shown so far, is that included standards in SAP Lumira?
A good question indeed, Christophe. And what you saw today, especially everything that I did in the demo, is included with SAP Lumira. And then furthermore, what I showed in the beginning, the Galileo extension would be going through Galileo. But the 3D world map, and there's a variety of other things that are out there, which are open source visualizations, and I'd encourage you to look it up. There is a web page, and we'll also be sharing this web page where you can find all of the extensions available for Lumira, and there's quite a bulk of geographical extensions for free out there as well. So everything I showed you today, apart from the Galileo extension in the intro, is included with SAP Lumira.
Okay, thanks. Maybe another question regarding licenses. Is Lumira included in the platform licenses?
In the BI Suite license, Lumira is included as full, and then if you look at the Edge licenses, we would be including the Lumira desktop client.
Okay. Looking at the audience, does anybody else have any questions for Nick or myself?
I see a question right here, and I will answer that in the chat.
Okay.
So the question is if you can drill down to street level on the geodata, and yes, indeed, this is possible. Using latitude and longitude, you can zoom into the street level. But also, for example, in Design Studio, you have this GeoJSON standard in which you can highlight an entire street that might be relevant to you. So those are two options that come to mind for me immediately.
Maybe one more question. Say that we have a data set containing addresses. How easy is it to get the latitude and longitude in that file? Because I think you said that this is something that needs to be done in the data preparation. Can you explain how you did that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Well, there's lots of free ways to do it, and there's somewhat more controlled ways to do it. So what you could do is, for example, I use this website. Let's see if my remote desktop is still open. I did not do the formatting of this website, but for example, if you look at this data right here, what we could do is we import some of this data. And you see the latitude and longitude being generated. And there's lots of free tools out there like that that do this. But for example, if you'd be wanting a more official way of doing that, and included in the BI Suite and BI Edge license is Data Integrator. And Data Integrator, it has its own ways of doing geocoding in your database. So that would be a more official way, but this is a quick and dirty way, as I like to call it, to create your geocoding right here.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that.
And I see another question in the chat with the standard maps delivered. Is it possible to go to the street level? Yeah, for sure. Just to give you a quick view of that. So this is with Esri, which is included. And then looking at all the locations in Brussels. So you see I can zoom in further and further. And as I zoom in further, you get more and more detail. And what you could also do here is if I would remove the size here, it becomes a bit smaller, and it's this specific dot. Oh, there we go. Where somebody is situated. So this can go to quite a specific line. And then if you want to have a satellite view, you could do that. If you would want to have I think there's a very old-fashioned view of a map. It makes it a bit hard to see, but you could do all those kinds of things. So I hope that answers the question. Let's see what else we have.
And now the people can really see, maybe find themselves on the map where they're logging in from. Quite interesting visualization, Nick.
It is, isn't it? Let's see, visualize line, that's not a point, but a string or a coordinate. So this is a bit more of an advanced capability, and I would say that Design Studio would be the better tool to do this. I know there are extensions out there, but I couldn't name the specific one that would highlight a street using Lemira. But with Design Studio, with the GeoJSON standard, you'd be able to do that for sure.
Okay. I see a lot of questions about street level. If required, Nick and my email address can be found, I think, on the invitation. So should you have any further questions, do not hesitate to contact us. I will be sending out the presentation we used, even though there's not much on the slides, afterwards, along with a link where you can review the webinar at a later time, should you want to do that or share it with your colleagues. Other than that, we're just in time. At 10:30 we were supposed to close, so we're right on track. So thank you everybody for logging in, and we are looking forward to welcoming you on one of our future webinars. I'd also like to thank Nick for an excellent presentation yet again, and thanks everybody for logging in. We will be hearing you soon, we hope. Thank you and goodbye.